Let me start with Mr. Fyodor Lukyanov. He's editor-in-chief of Russia in Global Affairs, a journal which is published in Russian and English. He is essentially a media man, but has done a lot of work in a number of areas, and is now the president of the Council on Foreign and Defence Policy, which is an independent foreign policy organization. He holds awards from the government of Russia, and I'll ask you to make your presentation. Let me say that we have about 2 hours. So, yeah, I think you could restrict it to about 20 minutes at the outside. That should be fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, my deepest gratitude to IDSA for this invitation. First, that's always a big pleasure to have an opportunity to come to India. Second, topic of this conference is absolutely extraordinarily important, and to collect such a fantastic group of speakers, I really enjoy it, and I would say this conference is is giving much more food for thought than many conferences on this issue I attended before. As all Russians who grew up and studied in the Soviet Union, and I just finished my studies a couple of months before collapse of my previous country, so all of us were fed up with ideology and Marxism, which officially used to be the main methodology, main conceptual framework for Soviet system, and we had to study all this at universities, even at schools, and then to use it in analysis and interpretations. So when Soviet Union collapsed, I think most of people were very happy to get rid of this particular part of previous system. I remember this because when Arab Spring erupted 2+ years ago, and after a couple of weeks watching Russian television and listening to Russian commentators, I really started to miss Marxism, because what I heard from our so-called analysts and experts on television used to be almost entirely, I would say 75% of all comments was, of course, we understand that everything there was organized by Americans. That's no doubt about that. The question is why. And this kind of interpretation, this kind of attempt to explain events which, of course, the Russian audience and Russian leadership, of course, was caught by surprise by them as anybody else. And there was quite a long period of public debate where people really wanted and tried to find reasons why United States organized this plot to destroy people like President Mubarak and others who used to be the most loyal to America, but if they do it, then it means that they have something in mind. Later, the more we got about this Arab Spring, the more reasonable voices that started to come. But I really felt that if we would still have Marxism as methodology, we could at least explain this development a bit more correctly than just to use conspiracy theories. Russia was basically quite indifferent vis-à-vis Arab Spring at the beginning, and developments in Tunisia and Egypt, of course, were discussed very much, but Russia was very slow in reacting. The only reaction initially was to ban Russian tourists to go to Egypt, which later on, when new government, the interim government, came and situation started to calm down. That caused a lot of trouble between Russia, between Moscow and Cairo, because I think this ban has been lifted 7 months after. So 7 months the Egyptian tourist industry tried to get it back, to get Russian tourists back, and this is a big part of tourists, foreign tourists coming to Egypt. And another conspiracy theory which I heard from my Egyptian friends was that Turkish tourist companies paid for that to Russian foreign ministry to extend this ban in order to, so to say, to win the competition. So that's another side of all this. But then came Libya, and the Libyan case, which gradually moved into Syrian case, suddenly became big part of Russian foreign policy, but also a significant part of Russian domestic policy. Russian position on Syria is widely and deeply misperceived and misunderstood. Now, 2 years after, actually, almost 2 years after, we start to read some articles in Western press, first of all, which state that a Russian position maybe is not based entirely on arms sales and ideological sympathy with President Assad. Meanwhile, from the beginning, the Russian stance on Syria, very mysterious to everybody, almost everybody worldwide, was not, or to very little extent, was defined by commercial interest or even geopolitical interest. That was a story, and is still a story about certain principles, how Russia sees how international order should be organized. More than that, I would dare to say that Russian position on Syria has almost nothing to do with Syria, has very little to do with the Middle East, and as for commercial interests which Russia used to have in Syria, the arms sales and some other contracts, initially it played a role in the very beginning when things started to erupt, but afterwards even the most greedy people in Russian Defense Ministry understood that business as usual with Bashar Assad regime is over, and then it was a completely different framework. This framework is very much connected to Russian position before, to Russian position on Libya. We still don't know what was the reason why President Medvedev in February 2011 decided not to veto a resolution allowing, sanctioning use of force against Gaddafi regime. It's still unclear because to everybody's knowledge, both foreign ministry and then Prime Minister Vladimir Putin were against this. They favored, they offered the traditional Russian position, were against use of force. So we are not endorsing that. Medvedev decided in a different way. Foreign Ministry fulfilled this decision, very disciplined. Now, just these days, I think 1 week ago or 2 weeks ago, a new movie was shown on Russian, not on television, but on YouTube, which is now almost the same because everybody watches YouTube. It was a big program, almost 2 hours program, about how this bastard called Medvedev, which by accident became our president, sold our friend Gaddafi and betrayed Russian interests. No one knows who produces those films. But this is part of internal struggle inside Russian political entourage, because we are now in the face of very significant, so preparation for very significant reshuffle of Russian domestic situation. It's difficult to understand why Prime Minister Medvedev is target of that, because his influence is almost zero. but still, he is seen as a symbol of something else, and there are forces, there are groups which believe that they will please President Putin by producing such programs. Anyway, Libyan experience was crucial for Russian position on Syria now. Whatever Medvedev meant when he decided not to veto, now I think even him is believing that that was a mistake, because Russian reaction on what happened after was that UN Security Council resolution has been gravely and deeply abused by NATO, which immediately turned the no-fly zone operation into regime change operation, which ended up in very famous killing of Gaddafi. And this experience played a very crucial role when Syria came on the radar. Was no doubt, it's almost consensus in Russian strategic community and political circles. No way, never more. So never more Libyan model. And I would say this is the main idea for all Russian diplomacy, all Russian foreign policy actions around Syria from the beginning until now. And unexpectedly and suddenly, Russia is very consistent to prove, to demonstrate that Libyan model will never be a precedent, will never be used as a way to settle local conflicts in the future. What is meant by Libyan model in this kind of thinking? When outside forces, you might call it international community or something else, so outside forces, powerful countries, powerful forces outside the country, decide which side in the civil war is right and which is wrong, and then endorse the right side against the wrong side and change regime by that. Not necessarily directly by intervention, as in Libyan case, but by massive and overwhelming support to one side until this side will win. And this is seen by Russian diplomacy and by President Putin, by the way, who is the main carrier of Russian political thinking nowadays, as conceptually wrong. It's not about dominance or hegemony of the United States anymore. His view is that it's conceptually totally wrong approach, which brings countries and international system at large to disastrous destabilization. So each next move destabilizes international situation by destroying classical principles of sovereignty. And this is Putin in his view on international affairs. He is traditional conservative, traditional structural realist. He believes in sovereignties as a units, as a basic units for international system, and he believes in balance of power as the only way to avoid wars. This phenomenon that Russia in this particular case is acting according to certain principles and not according to mercantilist interests as always before, that makes Russian position such unchangeable as it is, and which provokes and causes a lot of misunderstandings in the West and in the Arab world. I would draw a parallel. There's a second case when Russian position is such. The first case was 2007-2008 about Kosovo independence. At that time, I remember very well how I was asked by all my West European and American friends and counterparts, when Russia was very stubborn about not to allow Kosovo to become independent, I was asked, tell us, what does Russia want? So it's certainly Russia wants something. What we can give to Russia in order to get it on our side and to solve this issue. And when I try to explain that this time it's not about bargaining, it's really about principle, for good or bad reasons, but it's about principle. Nobody believed me. But then we had the unilateral independence, we had Georgian war, and that was exactly about do not touch, do not destroy borders which are existing, which are recognized. This time with Syria, it seems to be something similar. That Russia is not fighting for survival of Bashar Assad. Russia is not fighting even for limiting American presence in the Middle East, as many believe. Russia is trying to stop this Libyan precedent, which means that actually good outcome for Russian, from Russian point of view, the positive outcome would be not Bashar Assad staying in power. The positive outcome would be any change, but without foreign intervention. So if Syrian groups, clans, Syrian minorities, majorities will decide on any political process which will end up in any solution but by themselves, that will be seen by Russian diplomacy as a success. As for overall picture of Arab Spring, and this is also very important to note, that Russian picture is completely different from the beginning than picture in the West, for example. Even if we take away crazy conspirologists, reasonable experts from the beginning started to say that okay, democracy is fine, and of course there are internal domestic reasons for those upheavals, but the main driving force there is the Shia-Sunni divide, and that will grow. And Russian specialists, by the way, started to openly and frequently say it much earlier than, for example, American, because now it's accepted by everybody. But 2 years ago, Russian position was rather minority. Secondly, of course, there is an ongoing battle for local, regional influence and hegemony between Gulf states, first of all Saudi Arabia and Iran, and that will continue, and that will spill over. It's not only about Syria, it's about general constellation. And finally, Russia never believed that such conflicts might be isolated from outside forces' influence, not only regional but also the global ones. So there is a very deep mistrust vis-à-vis Western powers, because despite all talks now, for example, in the United States, that to deliver arms to rebels is not a good idea, there's a deep conviction in Russia that Americans never learn their lessons, and they will finally repeat the same mistake as they did in Afghanistan by giving weapons to Osama bin Laden and then coming, okay, we know what happened. I think that despite all these differences, the general approach of Russia is gradually moving closer to the general approach of, for example, the United States, partly because position of the United States is changing, partly because Russian specialists, diplomats, they are of course not stupid. They understand that in the current situation, it's very difficult to expect Bashar Assad to stay in power finally. So sooner or later it will be changed. But I don't think that Russia will try to, as many people expected and many people called Russia to do, will try to change side in order to guarantee positions in Syria after. That's not Russian logic, because the Libyan case again showed that it will not help. So Gaddafi was overthrown and killed basically because of Russian position, Russian non-veto, and that's fact of life. But first thing, new Libyan government said after change, Russian and Chinese companies are not welcome here. So to change side is not the good way to secure interest. On the contrary, Russia is rather inspired by Iraqi development, because Iraq, after overthrow of Saddam Hussein, was seen as lost forever for Russia. But now we see that despite many tensions, but Iraq is trying to diversify contacts also by coming to Russia and striking